Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Have you ever had such a huge backlog of games you didn't know what to do and you have some really new games that you've wanted to play all year staring at you? I have Assassin's Creed Origins, I have a Pokemon game that I've been really wanting to get to. However, what's on your mind is a game you bought dirt cheap on the Steam Summer Sale that you've been itching to play and you finally just break down and decide to play it. That is the story of Transformers Devestation and why I played it this week. It was created by Platinum Games, the same people who made old school Devil May Cry. It just had me wondering what they did with the Transformers and it looked interesting. After playing it, I can say this: a person's enjoyment with Transformers Devastation will come by just how hard this game will hit their nostalgia bone. As for me, I never really watched too much Transformers growing up. I had a tape though, so that I watched a lot actually, these 2 episodes on a VHS tape, so much that it broke. But outside of those 2 episodes that I can't really recall, I didn't watch them too much, so I'm not an expert in this. However, if you're wondering what made me watch the tape so much that it broke, it was a combination of having an awesome theme song, and I can hear the sound effect of them transforming all day long. Oh yeah! Okay, I'm going to do this one different, saying story, graphics, and sound are all in this one big thing combined, because Transformers Devastation is taking aim of the kids of the 1980s and all of these designs. Just take a look at these graphics. Yeah, at first glance they're just cel-shaded, but when you dive into it, they're not just cel-shaded, they're meant to look as close as an 80s cartoon as much as possible. The way that this New York City setting looks like a New York City setting in a lot of cartoons from that era really speaks to what they were aiming for. And yes, as I said before, I don't have much history with the classic Transformers, but I can tell a 1980s New York easy enough because I did watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters a lot as a kid. Even the character designs are right out of the 80s. And when it comes to the voice acting and special effects, one of them I already mentioned is right out of the 1980s cartoons. Voice acting as many of the original voice actors, and they have returned to reprise their roles. That means Peter Cullen is once again Optimus Prime, and Frank Welker is Megatron, and they both do a fantastic job as they are both veteran actors. So what about the story itself? Well, it's kinda cheesy and over the top like a 1980s cartoon, with a few lines that are obviously there meant to show that, yeah, we know the people who watch this show have grown up, so we're going to sneak in a little adult humor.
Plasma energy is unstable. No Cybertronian has been able to tame it since the Golden Age.
Then stand back, Starscream, and watch me tame it as I have tamed you.
Wow, did Megatron just say Starscream is his bitch? Anyways, the overall story has the Decepticons watching as a giant tower appears in the middle of New York City, along with some giant hands and a swarm of robots called Insecticons. The Decepticons are of course bewildered by this, mainly because they didn't save their allowance to buy the Insecticon toys that this is so obviously promoting. At any rate, these things are out to transform New York City into Cybertron. Something Megatron wants, but it doesn't take long before Optimus and the Autobots show up and start shutting things down. It seems most of their problems comes from an old Autobot starship that crash-landed on Earth with the mission to preserve Cybertron by finding new planets and cyberforming them. Unfortunately, Earth is inhabited and it shouldn't be here doing what it's doing. So, Optimus has to find a way to stop the ship. Only problem, this ship has basically all the history and culture of Optimus's people recorded on it, making destroying it not an option. Again, not the best story a video game ever told, but since when did an 80s cartoon have good storytelling? Outside of the episode in He-Man and the Masters of the Universe called The Problem with Power, they really didn't concentrate on storytelling. That said, as far as this game goes, I love the idea of them bringing back a nostalgic cartoon as a video game, trying to copy the look and the feel of that show as much as possible in a modern day video game. And I hope other developers and publishers who own those licenses can come back and do that. I'd love to see a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that actually looks and feels like the classic 80s cartoon. I would love to see something that looks like a classic filmation version of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I'd really love to see that in a video game. Alright, let's tackle the gameplay next. And while it's not a bad game when it comes to the gameplay, it's just not as near as good as the presentation. And yes, it would have had to have been a pretty damn good video game in order to match the level of the presentation. Anyways, the game is somewhat open world, but it's a really tiny open world where you're guided around basically the same part of New York City, beating up, I won't lie, some similar looking Decepticons, and yes, it gets repetitive. Occasionally you will go into either the Cybertronian ship or to Cybertron itself, and the areas pretty much look similar to this when you go into these areas. So basically you have outside New York or Cybertron, and that's it. There's not much of a way to explore or much of a reason really to explore, unfortunately. And yes, you will come across the same area way too frequently. Anyways, the Transformers can equip 4 weapons, 2 melee and 2 range-like guns and grenade launchers. Melee weapons, like an action game, have a few different combos which end with your robot transforming into an automobile and running the enemy down. You can also dodge attacks to get in a few minutes of extra damage during the slowdown. The combat is pretty decent, I suppose. Granted, I could only get past the first stage on normal and had to take the easy mode because I kept getting beat. The game does have an interesting RPG system to it. Not only can you level up your favorite Autobot, and yeah, I went with Optimus because quite frankly, he's the only one I know. But you can also take your weapons and throw away your weaker weapons to craft stronger ones, which is a step above what I was expecting from this game. Unfortunately, shooting enemies is kinda dull. They don't do much to large bosses to stop them, so basically if they fly and you can't reach them, then you're probably supposed to shoot them. Otherwise, just use your melee attack. Devil May Cry, where you're supposed to change your approach constantly, this is not. And while I only did play with one character, there are 5 to choose from, each handled quite a bit differently, and I could see myself go through the game again just to try this game as either Bumblebee or Sideswipe. Not the dinosaur though, as cool as this idea sounds, he's the oddball gag character that's hard to control, and found out the hard way after just a few minutes that he is garbage. In the end, the gameplay isn't the greatest, as it's a bit simple and a bit repetitive, but it's not bad. The controls are good, there's some decent ideas, and it has a deeper leveling and progression system than what I was expecting. I won't lie, the gameplay wasn't as exciting or thrilling as the fact of experiencing an episode of an 80s cartoon brought to life as a modern day video game. The gameplay just doesn't hold up its end of the deal. That said, if you're looking for something to feed your nostalgia, this is definitely a game for you. Now for some really bad news, unfortunately. This has been pulled off of Steam, and while it's still available on some other digital storefronts as of this recording, I wouldn't be too surprised to see it disappear before the end of the year, and here's why. This is a licensed game. That means its publisher, Activision, went to Hasbro and purchased a license to make this game. And when you own a license to release a game like this on the digital storefronts, it means they go away as soon as that license expires. Now, generally, this isn't a bad thing because licensed games like this are complete garbage. But occasionally you do get good games that, if you're a fan of said license, you might find some enjoyment, and it's a shame to see these go away. Now, Transformers is going away, but also The Legend of Korra, which I reviewed a few years ago. A lot of people hated that game. I enjoyed it. I can understand their hatred, and that's because The Legend of Korra, the animated series, was really good at storytelling and character-driven plots, while the video game was a simple, straightforward action game. And it was made by the same developers who made Transformers Devestation, by the way. But the thing is, Platinum Games, Devil May Cry, and all that didn't go on the story. It went on the action games, and I'm pretty sure they were told on the Legend of Korra, don't do anything to disrupt this great narrative, so they kept it incredibly simple. But it's still a fun game, and it's a shame that people won't be able to pick this one up anymore because it's now going to go away. Now, there's always a chance of license renewal. Activision did it with Deadpool. However, they did it because Deadpool became popular again when they released the movie. I don't see Korra coming back, and I doubt they'll pick up Transformers again. I could be wrong. The good news is, although it's off the digital marketplace, and although I think it probably was only released digital for PCs, don't quote me on that, it was released physical for consoles. So if you own an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, you can still get your hands on this with a physical copy down at your GameStop, or just hop on eBay and take a look around. If you can pick it up for about $15 or less, I would definitely recommend it. It was a fun experience. Gameplay, though, is a bit lacking, and I wouldn't pick this one up for anything more than $15. It's also super short. I beat it in about 5 or 6 hours, and unless, like I said, you got that nostalgia itch to go experiencing it again, I really don't see myself playing this one too much from now on. Anyways, this is Tommy the Game Master, thanking you for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below.